It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas everywhere you go.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to Ho Ho Oh, our Project Potter holiday special. Guys, my name is Kyler, host. Thanks for checking out Project Potter. This is our holiday special. We're doing 25 straight nights of Christmas movie reviews, guys. We've made it to night 19. We're reviewing Love Actually, the 2002 movie that somehow feels like it was made a lot earlier. This feels like a 90s movie, and when I checked the date on here, I was like, 2002. This is weird. And they actually mentioned 9/11 in the opening of this, so I thought that was really powerful, and it's kind of stuck in that time capsule, but interesting to look back on, and I think it's important as well, and the message speaks to that. So if you haven't been here before, guys, thanks for checking out the channel. What I'm going to do is go through my favorite scenes on the movie, my favorite character, my least favorite character, score out of 10, and rank it with the Ho Ho Oh rankings through 19 nights. So guys, let's go. This movie's all about love. I mean, obviously, love actually. If you look around, there's love all around us. And again, they mentioned about like when the planes hit the towers, there was a lot of hatred, and they're like, if you look all around, there's love all around us. And it just gets you thinking, like, love is the first thing we have when we're a baby, and love is everything, right? And like that speaks to me too, where it's like, there's not enough love in this world sometimes, I feel like. So that sounded dark. It's not what I meant. But I just meant like we all need to remind ourselves that we're all kind of in the same boat here, guys, and we're all pushing for love, and we all want love, right? That's what we're all here for. It's Christmas time, right? This cast is just great. I mean, we got Rick Grimes, dude, Andrew Lincoln. We got the guy from Doctor Strange, Mondu or Modo or whatever his name is, the guy that's, the evil villain now, or he's in Multiverse of Madness 2, spoilers. Colin Firth, who's great, and his like girl that lives there, and he's kind of like housemaid for him, but then he goes over to like write his new book, and he like goes away to France or wherever he goes, and then it's a cute story at the end. I'll get to that, guys. Hugh Grant is the politician, the prime minister, I should say, and he's just like got this crazy thing, and he's got that great dance scene in that middle of the movie. And then we have Alan Rickman, who's like, there will be no wand waving or silly incantations in this movie, but there will be love and lots of it. Turn to page 394. It's just a great cast, dude, and it's a great story, and there's so many different stories, and I'll talk about some things I didn't like at the end there, guys, but this is a damn good movie, and it's really an emotional movie, and the cast is great, and it's like some of the most realistic acting and writing I've seen, and I've mentioned that on a couple of my reviews here, guys, that have really had the higher scores. The big things that have stuck out to me have been like the writing and the realism, and like how it doesn't either feel like they're acting, it just kind of feels like it's a reflection of real life. And this movie especially is like, it's a Christmas movie, and it's like, 4 months or 4 weeks till Christmas, 3 weeks, and they mention Christmas, but it's weird because this doesn't really feel like a Christmas movie to me. I don't know what it is exactly, because there's a lot of reference to Christmas, and it plays a huge part, and it says Merry Christmas and everything. But something about this movie, I think it's just because it pulls on the heartstrings so much, and it really dives deep into these relationships. And the only thing I'd say I didn't love at the end is like they all kind of know each other. Like they show up at the airport, and like Andrew Lincoln's character and Modo, and Keira Knightley, who Doctor I shouldn't call him Modo. That guy who from Doctor Strange. Well, that's a little bit better, I guess. He ends up marrying Keira Knightley, and then Andrew Lincoln's character is in love with Keira Knightley. We get that famous scene where he shows up, and it's actually so sweet, and like it's so sad and sweet, and somehow they like move past it. But Andrew Lincoln shows up, he's got the cards, and she goes down, and this is after she's already seen the wedding video, where she's like, oh, I just want to see like some of our video. And there's a scene earlier where he's obviously like just filming her, and then there's like a girl next to him, and she's like, are you in love with him or something? And he's like, no, 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 no. And he like closes it. But I don't know why she didn't say you're loving her with her, because he would have been like, I gotta go. But he's like, clearly had feelings for her, and she's like, hey, you've never been friendly to me. I know you've been his friend, but you've never talked to me. She's like, what's going on? I'm a nice person. She's like, I brought baked goods. And the reason he hasn't really talked to her is because he's been in love with her. And so it's like hanging over him, and he goes there, and it's the sweetest scene, dude, where he's like, who is it? And, he's like, shh, and he has a boombox, and he has the card. It says, say it's Christmas carolers. And she goes, it's Christmas carolers. And then he, keeps saying the things. He's like, it's Christmas, we tell the truth. There's a cute thing where he's like, I would love you until you look like this. And he gets like a picture of like a mummy, basically, and she's laughing. And it's so sweet. But he says like my wasted heart, where he basically knows that like he's in love with her and he needs to tell her, but he knows he can never be with her because they're together, and it's so like so sweet and so heartbreaking and sad at the same time. But he gets it off there, and then he's like, all right, Merry Christmas, and obviously he like says on the cards, and it's so 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 sweet and touching. And so he walks away, and she goes over and kisses him, and then he says, enough, that's enough, like to himself, like he's like, I have to move on. And it's just stuff like that where it's like, in any other movie, right? He says the cards and she's like, oh my God, that's so sweet. And then she leaves him and then ends up with Andrew Lincoln. But that's not how this movie works, because that's not how life works. And she goes, wow, that's so incredibly sweet. And then she's like, but I like my husband's upstairs, dude. So they're still friends after that, which is weird because you think it would be like a weird dynamic, but that's for Love Actually too. Love Mostly is what the sequel would be called. Alan Rickman's whole thing, dude, where he's not even really into like his secretary or whatever. She's just really into him, and she's like, oh, we can go to this place, lots of dark corridors to do dark deeds. And she like spreads her legs, and he's like, oh, and he's like, hey, I gotta go. That great scene where he goes Christmas shopping, and she's like, get something for me, and he's like, oh, I wasn't planning on it, but now he's like, oh shit, now I gotta do that. So he goes and he gets out looks for the jewelry, and he's like, how much is that one? And it's like a nice gold necklace. And Mr. Bean tells him it's this much. And he says, good, I'll take it. And then he goes, cool, would you like gift wrapped? And he goes, yeah, sure. And he's like looking around for his wife the whole time. It's funny because Alan Rickman is so likable, and like my heart hurts because I miss Alan Rickman. But I mean, there's a Harry Potter reference, which is just funny. In this one, Hugh Grant's like, we got Harry Potter. And I was like, I mean, I guess the books were bigger too, but like this was like a year after the first movie. It wasn't even like huge yet. And that's funny. And we get a brief cameo from Billy Bob Thornton, who plays the American president, who's like, of course, like, looking to hit on all the girls and all that stuff, guys. But yeah, I don't want to recap shot for shot, but there's just so many great scenes. But it's really the dynamics in this movie, and how there's like all these individual love stories, right? Where it's like they got the great singer played by Billy, and he's going through and he's like, singing the song, and he's like, this song is absolute garbage. He's like, this is trash. He's like, if we win number one, I'm going to get naked. And at the end, of course, he does. He's like, there's no way this is going to happen. And he's like, this is just an awful song. And then he's like making fun of his fat manager the whole time, or he calls him a chubby manager. And at the end, he goes, bloody hell. He goes, I was at Elton John's party. And he's like, I come here, and he's like, turns out you have the bloody love of my life. And it's really nice. And they hug, and this movie is all about, one way or another, people finding out like their loved ones. And we get the girl at work, and she's like in love with Carl, who's like the guy that looks like Jon Snow, basically. And they finally hook up, but then like they're about to like sleep together, and then she's getting a call, and she's like, darling, darling, and we think like, oh, that's her husband, but it's actually like her special needs brother. And it's so sad because she's like, man, this is like a full-time job, and it's like work. And she's like, and I don't want to say it's work. And again, just the acting is so realistic, where it's like, I was like, dude, I get it, and so you as the audience are going around, and you're being like, wow, that's amazing. And it's so sad because like, she goes to see him, and he's just like, he needs so much care and attention that like she can't really be on her own ever. She doesn't have privacy, but she knows like, she's obviously not going to abandon him. And I think she said their parents are gone or something, which is why that's happening. I don't know. But he's like in a home, of course, but like there's a super sad scene where he's like, the nurses are trying to kill me, and she's like, no one's trying to kill you. And then like he goes to like hit her, and she like knows it's coming, so she like stops it. And then the nurses come over, and like they like just the acting, even on like the background, like the nurses, like I would say the extras, but like I guess they're a part of the scene, where they're just kind of like, it's like sad and they're disturbed, but they're looking. It's so good. And just the acting throughout it is amazing. And it's just really, really good. And Liam Neeson, like, telling the Liam Neeson Sam dynamic, dude. I mean, Sam got to be like one of the cutest kids ever cast in a movie. Like, just that's an adorable goddamn kid, let me tell you. And so he's telling them, and he's like, oh yes, the agony of being in love. And Liam Neeson's like, yeah, but dude, you got to tell her it's Christmas. And he gets they are like watching Titanic, and there's that great scene where he's like, do you trust me? He's like, I trust you. And they're like wrestling on the couch, and Liam Neeson is a step down, but he's like really, really giving that father energy. And they say like the mom just died, and he's really like crying in the beginning from that. And then I think his sister is the one who is married to Severus Snape over there, Alan Rickman, but I'm not sure. But then we find out at the end that like Hugh Grant's character, the Prime Minister, is the brother of Alan Rickman's wife, and so it's all like I I didn't love that they're all connected. I was like, because it was really nice having like these different stories, but then at the end when you know Colin Firth shows up, oh my god, guys, I almost forgot to mention this scene. The adorable, the sweetest scene where he's going. First of all, everyone's doing the sweetest shit ever at the end of this movie, and it's a little like on the nose, and but it's really sweet. And that the love, guys, let's talk about the Love Actually theme song for a second. My god, hits you right in the feels, dude, every time. It's so good, and it's almost it almost like a little like Beauty and the Beast, except it's a little more like modern. And it's just every time something sweet happens or every time something emotional happens, they start playing that theme, and you're like, there we go. Like here come the waterworks, you know. I was sobbing in this movie. It was so sweet, and the whole thing. I think my favorite dynamic in this movie was the Colin Firth and foreign housemaid like dynamic. The whole scene, dude, where she like goes to bring him a new coffee or whatever, and then it's like a super windy day, and he's got the coffee mug on the papers, and then she just like innocently goes to replace it with a new drink, and all the pages fly away. And he's like, "Oh my god, it's half the book." And she's like, "Oh," and they don't understand each other really well because they haven't really learned each other's languages. So they both jump in the river. She's like, "Oh my god, it's so cold." She says it in her language, and he goes, "Oh my god, it's fucking freezing in here." And he's wandering around. He's like, I just hope there's not any eels." And she's like, "Try not to disturb the eels." And they don't understand each other, but like it's a hilarious scene as the audience, but it's really sweet. And he's like, "Oh, now I have to jump in because she's gonna think I'm crazy if I don't." And it's just so sweet, dude. I loved their interactions, and it was like so touching when he like I missed the part. She just must not know how to drive or must not have her license, I think, because like I guess every morning she gets dropped off and then he has to drive her home or back. He drives her to the airport at the end, but he has to like drive her home every night. And so it's like their sweet time, and they when they're like drying up or whatever, she says like, the saddest part of my day is the drive home, like you leaving me. And he says my favorite part of the day is getting to drive you or spending my drive with you or something. And it's so sweet because they're like they want to be with each other, but they can't communicate. And so at the end, for him to go knocking on the doors, just like the prime minister is, where he's like, is Natalie here or whatever? And they go to the play and then they're revealed. That was really cute too. But the end where Colin Firth's character goes and he's like, I love the scenes where he's got the headphones in and he's like, that's a huge fish, and he's like learning he's learning her language, right? And he goes over there, he takes a plane, and at one time in the story, she said like, "Oh, I live on over here or whatever." He finds out where she lives. He goes to the house and he says, "I'm here to marry your daughter." It's like a broken language. And then there's like a larger daughter that comes out and he's like, "Hey, this man wants to marry you." She's like, "I've never seen him before." He's like, "Who cares? Just get his money or whatever." Or he's like, "I'll pay him." And he's like, sorry, your other daughter." And she's like, "Oh, she's at work. I'll show you." And then, they bring the whole town out there and then they show up and it's like this really romantic, quaint restaurant. And like, it's this like nice little cozy place. And she's out there and he says like, "Will you marry me?" and stuff. But it's so funny because he's saying like, we couldn't always stand each other, but he's like, with certain things like love, it's just there's just transparency, and it's like it's so true, dude. Where it's like full love speaks through, and it's like I know it sounds cheesy, but it's like you just know, and it was just so beautiful, man. And this is a beautiful movie, and I've probably talked too much about it, but it's my review and my show, guys. So we're gonna let love shine all Christmas long, baby. Guys, that brings us to my favorite character, which is going to be Colin Firth's character. And the whole cast was so good, like I said, guys. And the fact that we got Rick Grimes and Mordo or whatever his name is from Doctor Strange, super cool. And I was like, oh, it's funny because like it was obviously it was before those roles, but funny to see those two characters together. And then obviously Keira Knightley and everyone is great, guys. And Hugh Grant's dance is amazing. But Colin Firth, like I said, guys, Colin Firth was the best one. I thought he was just so genuine and great. And Colin Firth is great, I mean, the King's Speech alone is fantastic. But before the King's Speech, we had him in this, and it's like his acting chops are just supreme, and like you really feel the on-screen chemistry and like how genuine it is. And every scene with them was so good and so sweet and heartbreaking because they couldn't they couldn't really understand each other. But it's like he says, dude, it's transparent, where it's like there was a mutual love connection, even though they were speaking different languages, even though they came from different sides, even though they couldn't communicate perfectly, they felt the love still, and that's so awesome. And I just thought Colin, everyone was so good, but I just thought Colin Firth's character was the one that stood out the most and was the best one and the most genuine one. And even though different characters played different beats, I thought his character was the best one, and he gets my award for favorite character. Okay, guys, my least favorite character is someone I actually haven't mentioned in this review yet because I kind of forgot, even though it was a fun bit. The guy who goes to America, to Milwaukee, and is like, he's just looking for sex. And he's like, hey, I can't score with any of the girls here in the UK. I'm going to go over to America. They love guys with the English accents. And he's like, I'm gonna do great. And his friends telling him, like, dude, that's so dumb. He's like, bollocks, that's never gonna work. He tells him the whole movie, it's not gonna work, not gonna work. And then it is funny that he goes there and he's like, take me to a bar. He's like, which bar? He's like, any bar. And he runs into like three models, and they're like, oh well, you have to stay with us, but they're like, it's so cold, or so we all have to snuggle up, so we all have to be naked. And he's like, oh, okay. He's like, I think that'll work. And they have like a fourth sister or whatever, and then he ends up like marrying that one or something. So it was funny, but I just thought of all the cast that was so good, his storyline and his character, I think, was just a little too like cheesy and punchy, and it just didn't feel like it fit in with the rest because the rest were all like serious, like romantic, like sweet stories. His was just like he's just trying to get laid, and he couldn't get laid in the UK. Again, guys, with the worst character, it's usually not necessarily the actor, it's just the situation or the writing or just the way that character's arc goes. And so that's the case again here, where that character was my least favorite. Hey guys, that brings us to a score. This is a 9.5 for me. And I originally thought this would rival number one for me. But a couple things stood out to me this watch, guys. I've seen this movie a couple times, but not really from start to finish as much. But I always have loved this movie. I've always really enjoyed this movie. And as the older I've gotten, the more I've understood it and the more I've connected with it. The fact that they all know each other, I was like, this would have been really, really sweet if these were just like individual stories where it's like, wow, that's so sweet. And let's check in on this character, this character. And then when they all show up at the airport at the end, they're like, oh, it's this guy and this guy. And I'm like, we didn't, this kind of kills it for me. Also, guys, I didn't mention Martin Freeman's character, who with the women who they're porn actors, but they're like so polite. And it's really funny because they're like, oh, all right, yep, well, it's just traffic was terrible today, and then they end up falling in love too, which was funny, and they go on like an actual date. But it's just funny because they're like going there for work basically, and in this like super intimate setting, and then they're just like the most polite, like shy people, which is funny. So that was cool too. Another reason why I really like this movie, but yeah, I didn't like that they're all connected. I thought that was weird, but everything else, man, is just so good. And again, something about this movie, even though there's so many mentions of Christmas, I don't know what it is, guys, but it just when I think of Christmas movies, I don't necessarily think of this movie. And I know it takes place during Christmas, and I know they have a countdown to Christmas, and I know there's a whole subsection about a Christmas song be number one. And they show the trees, and they go there on Christmas, and it says Merry Christmas. There's so much Christmas in this movie. But for whatever reason, I think it's because the focus of the movie is about love and in some ways heartbreak. I didn't even mention that scene, guys, where Alan Rickman's wife, she's like all excited because she like sees him looking at the jewelry initially, and then at the end, Mr. Bean's taking too long, and he's just like, forget it, forget it. And he like walks away, and she's like, oh, okay. He's like looking at jewelry, and she's like, don't worry, I don't want any jewelry. But then she like searches his coat pocket later and sees the necklace, and she's excited because she like sees how big the box is. He wants to go back and like get in a smaller box. And then she's like, "Oh, let me unwrap this present." And she's so excited, and because she thinks she knows that it's a necklace. And then when it's just a CD of the same box, she's so heartbroken because she knows that she saw him at the jewelry thing, knows he got the necklace because she found it in his coat pocket, and then she knows it's going to another woman. And she brought up earlier in the movie, like, watch out for this girl. She's really pretty. And she sees at the party that they're dancing together. And so she knows, right? She's not stupid. And so she's breaking down, and it's super sad, but it's so realistic, dude. And it's like, this is something that would happen. And, it's so sad, but it's like, that's what I like about this movie is that it's not just happy endings. It's not just like constantly happy. It's Andrew Lincoln's character not getting with Keira Knightley, right? It's the things like that where it's like, this is the guy, the friendly guy that has loved her this whole time, but they don't end up happily ever after because that's not how life works, dude. And so it was just really, really good. And this movie is great and it's emotional, and the cast is so good, and the score is great, and it's really, really, really clever writing, and like genuinely funny, and everyone is so different, like the different pieces that they send you with, or the different couples, I should say, but there's different pieces to each one, and it's like not everyone gets that happy ending. Like I said, guys, not to repeat myself, but yeah, it's a fantastic movie. It's just not quite what I think of when I think of like Christmas movies, and so when I'm thinking about the score and all these things, guys, I think it's a great movie, and it gets a very high score, better than most movies. But there's still certain things that are holding it back, I think. But other than that, and I didn't even mention, guys, Sam at the end of the airport, a little, a little stretched out when Sam is like trying to run to the girl, and he says like, "That's the love of my life," and Liam Neeson's like, "Come on, let's get in the car. I know a shortcut to the airport." And if I'm Liam Neeson, I would have been like, "It's really, really sweet," because he's like, he'll do anything for this kid. But he's like, you know what? She gets in the taxi, goes to the airport. And he's like, you know what, man, traffic is bad. Like, I don't know. He's got a very particular set of skills, so he gets to the airport, and they go there, guys, and then like, they're like, "Oh, you can't get here without any boarding pass." I was like, okay, that's where this movie is good, because I was like, this would never happen. And then Mr. Bean comes up, throws a favor, and then because everybody knows everybody, and he's like, "Oh, hold my jacket and hold this," and he's like, "Unless you want to make a run for it," and then he runs, and it's really sweet because he's like, "Joanna," through the glass, and she can't hear him. And then he finally goes in there, and then they kind of like arrest him, but then they like he's a kid, so they're just like, "Dude, what? Stop breaking security." But this movie, really sweet, really great, really emotional, one of my favorites for sure, and that's why it gets the high score that it gets. Hey guys, that brings us to the Ho rankings. Guys, number 1, Spirited, a 10 out of 10. Number 2, Home Alone, a 9.9. Number 3, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, at a 9.8. Number 4, Bad Santa, at a 9.7. Number 5, Daddy's Home, at a 9.6. And guys, this one slots in at the new number 6 at a 9.5, just below Daddy's Home 2. So then at number 7, guys, we have 8 Crazy Nights at a 9.4. And the night before at an 8.6. Jingle All the Way at an 8.4. Just Friends at an 8.3. How the Grinch Stole Christmas at an 8.2. A Muppet Christmas Carol at 7.4 with Michael, okay? Klaus at a 7.1. Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special at a 6.6. Deck the Halls at a 6.5. The Polar Express at a 6.1. A Charlie Brown Christmas at a 5.7. Christmas of the Cranks at 5.3. And the last one, guys, A Christmas Story at a 2.5. And that is how our rankings shape up through 19 nights. All right, guys, that's another episode of Ho Ho Oh. Thanks for checking out the channel, guys. We have not missed a night yet. I'm determined not to miss a night. We're almost at the end here, guys. A few more nights. Christmas is approaching. Love is in the air, guys. Go out to your loved ones. If you are in love with your friend's wife, go get a bunch of cards like Andrew Lincoln does and go to their doorstep and make sure the husband doesn't answer the door. And if he does, just turn around and then hide the cards and then say, "I need your wife to answer the door." And then when she does, say it's Christmas carols, and then the rest will all work itself out. If you love someone, tell them you love them, not just at Christmas, but just that line from Liam Neeson where he says, "I should have told your mother I loved her every day because she was perfect every day." And I was like, oh, my heart, dude, But great movie, great time, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you thought. And until tomorrow night, guys, peace.